Hi, my name is Ed Robbins. I am a sales engineer here at Denodo, and I'm going to spend the next few minutes walking you through some demos to illustrate how Denodo helps customers deploy data as a service in their organization. The demos that I'm going to show you kind of fall into three buckets. The first one that we're going to take a look at is how we can integrate external data with our existing data assets that we've built in-house. So this particular example is we want to integrate weather data with our sales data and understand that when the weather is abnormally bad, does that affect our retail sales? So a power user has done some research for us and they located some data sets from the National Weather Service. The data set looks promising, but it's a very, very large data set, and at this point, we're not even sure we're going to use it. So we're going to use data virtualization to investigate the value of this data before embarking on a big ETL project. The next example we're going to show is how you can connect all your different data silos that exist in your organization through Denodo and limit the amount of data that has to be shuttled back and forth. So in this example, we are using Hadoop to gather up all the unstructured data that we're collecting from Twitter and Facebook and other social media, and we're running some sentiment analysis using R to generate a sentiment analysis score for each of our products. We're then going to issue a query that joins the sales data that comes from the relational database with the sentiment analysis that was calculated on Hadoop and is accessible through Impala. And then finally, we're going to show how you can enable pre-built and packaged analytics. And the example we're going to show is taking a look at current intraday sales and how that compares to each retailer's sales target for a given product for a given year. So since this data is changing on a daily basis, we need to make it dynamic and we need to make it accessible through multiple interfaces. Okay. So the first use case is integrating weather data with our existing sales data. So power users come to us and told us that they found some data sets from the National Weather Service that look promising. The only challenge is that currently the data all sits on an FTP server. It is all organized based on weather station identifier and year, and on top of that, the data is all in gzip format. And for each year, there's literally thousands of these files representing each of the National Weather Center's weather stations, and we're only going to need a very small subset of that data. And at this point, we're not even sure that this data is going to be of value to us. So rather than creating a big ETL project to pull all this data in and clean it and join it, what we're going to do is use Denodo to create a sort of ad hoc ETL process for each of these files. So let's take a look at what that is. So the first thing I wanted to point out is Denodo has the capability of creating an FTP service. So what this means is we've defined an FTP service that points at a particular FTP site. So this is pointing at the directory that I just showed you for the National Weather Service. And we can also pass that directory a variable. In this case, the variable is going to be called path, and it's effectively going to be the fully qualified file name that we want to return. So this service is going to be called as part of the weather by zip code FTP view. So let's take a look at that view. So what we're doing in this view is on the left-hand side here, the end user can either enter the zip code or the retailer name, and that is going to translate into a weather station identifier. The weather station identifier is then going to be passed to our FTP service, and it's going to go and grab the appropriate file for that location and that year. So I'm going to go ahead and execute it, and in this case, I'm doing a lookup based on zip code. And this is, in fact, a live query that is going out to that FTP site and reading the data in zipped format and applying metadata on top of it so that it looks like general relational data. Now, if you look here, all I did was issue a straight select statement against that view that I've created. And in fact, I'm going to copy that select statement, and I'm going to go ahead and run it in MicroStrategy. And you see it looks just like any other relational data coming back to me. The difference is that when we issue that select statement, what Denodo is really doing behind the scenes is it's turning that query, or it's turning that select statement into an FTP call. So if we take a look at the execution trace, this is showing all the branches of the execution. And over here on the right-hand side, it's showing our FTP service. And we can see that after the select statement, we can actually see the FTP call that's being made. So we issued a select statement to that view, and Denodo has subsequently turned that select statement into an FTP call that grabs a file in gzip format, reads it, unzips it, and presents the results to our end user. So now our BI power user can go out and evaluate this data set and make a determination on whether or not it's going to bring us value as an organization. And if it does, then it makes sense for us to perhaps bring more of this data in-house. But again, we're still at the evaluation phase, and so we would like as many people as possible to take a look at this data. And we run a global organization, and so not everybody's going to have JDBC access and want to use a BI tool. So we're going to expose this view as a web service. So I'm going to go ahead and say new, and I'm going to create a RESTful web service. And I'm just going to go ahead and deploy this web service that I just identified. And if I click on the link, it's now going to show me the same information that I saw in MicroStrategy as well as what I saw in the tool. However, the web service is not a static web service, and so once we've deployed it, end users can come in and query this based on either zip code or retailer name. So in this situation, the end user doesn't know the particular zip code, but they know that they want to get the weather data for this particular retailer, Fresh Air Fitness. And so I'm going to click the search and retailer name. I'm going to put Fresh Air Fitness, and I'm going to go ahead and search. And it's doing the same thing. And so it's turned that query for Fresh Air Fitness into a call to the FTP server, and it's returned the weather data for that current location for that particular year. Okay? The next example that we wanted to show was the combining silos of data. So in this example, we are basically looking at customer feedback by product. Now, if we take a look at the tree view, we can see that there's a lot of entities that are involved in this particular view, but the most important one that I want to point out is that we're basically joining together a whole bunch of different product information, and then ultimately we're combining that with a Impala search. So we have Impala running on our Hadoop cluster, and it is exposing the results set from a sentiment analysis that our data scientists did. So we're going to be joining up data from multiple relational database tables and joining that with data that resides on Hadoop. And if I just go ahead over to MicroStrategy. And so just as Paul said, rather than simply delivering the end results to, or the raw numbers to our users and expecting them to do the analysis, we're actually delivering a calculated bit of information here that people can do something with right away. So we're not just delivering data, we're actually delivering data analytics as a service. And then finally, we have an example here that takes a look at top sales versus target. So this is actually taking a look at our sales information on an intraday basis and comparing that to our sales target from a prior year. So if I go over to my query, so this is actually giving us an up-to-the-second reading of our sales coming from our operational system and comparing that to our historical record of what our sales target was. So we're not only returning the intraday sales along with the sales target, we're also providing the difference as well as the percentage of target attainment for each retailer for that particular product type. Now, since this data is by its nature volatile and is going to change on a daily basis, there are probably going to be different types of users that want to consume it other than just BI users. So in this example, we have a number of developers that want to embed this data in some of their web applications and dashboards. And so in addition to providing SQL access to the view, we've also created a web service here. And the web service is returning the same data, but excuse me. But we're typically going to want to return this data rather than an HTML format. We're going to want to return it in something like an XML or a JSON. So the application developer is more interested in the data being in a format that they can consume than necessarily being very readable like HTML. And the only thing we need to do to make this data service display in XML format is to just add a little tag at the end of the URL. So I hope the demo was helpful in showing how Denodo can help you enable data as a service in your organization. And I thank you for your time today.